Hello, this is Bill Carollo, Coordinator of Officials for the Big Ten, Mid-American, and Missouri Valley Conferences. Today's CFO training tape will focus on the various unsportsmanlike conduct fouls as well as some major mechanics changes that will result in UNS fouls for individual acts as well as UNS fouls for entire teams. Currently, we have well over a dozen different specific acts that will lead to UNS fouls. Unsportsmanlike acts, unfair tactics, and unfair acts will all be included in this training tape. So with that, let's get to the video. Our first play will involve number 86. After the play is over, he flips the ball at his opponent in his team area. This is a good job by the field judge in this case to continue to officiate. This is clearly a foul meant to try to intimidate his opponent and is properly called. Our next play is a good example of taunting an opponent. At the end of the play, you can see the defender stands over his opponent, taunts him. This is clearly a foul. End zone shot has a good look at this. Line judge comes in, back judge comes in. Both flag it. This is something we want to take out of the game, and I think we've done a nice job. Continue to officiate. Our next play involves a player who just scores a touchdown, continues to celebrate, and tries to intimidate his opponent, as well as draw attention to himself with the spectators. We know that players are not allowed to do a throat slash, but what about a stab to the heart and a slash? We can't put everything in the rule book. If you think this action of taunting or inciting a player and the spectators in any way, then it is a foul. This, to me, is enough to throw the flag for unsportsmanlike conduct for a chest slash. Not all UNS fouls are by the skilled position players. Keep an eye on number 65 of Michigan State. He steps in and stands over his opponent after a big hit. Referee stays with the action, makes a correct call for UNS as he taunts his opponent. We've done a nice job managing this next area, players removing their helmets, but still, some players still continue to do that to draw attention to themselves. Keep an eye on player number 22. After the play is over, makes a great play, but then continues to celebrate, removes his helmet coming off the field. This is a foul, and the referee does an excellent job making the proper announcement.
After the play was over, unsportsmanlike conduct on Miami number 22. Took his helmet off. 15-yard penalty. First down, Miami. That's number 22's first unsportsmanlike of the game.
Our next play involves a routine touchback, and sometimes the tendency is to relax after plays of this nature because the whistles are blowing. But this crew does a nice job continuing to officiate. After the play is over and the whistles have blown, you'll see a double team block right around the 30-yard line, and it takes them into the side zone. Properly called for UNS, number 31, as the action continues well after the play. Another variety of UNS fouls, pulling players off the pile. This is a good example of players being pulled off the pile, which leads to other things, other issues after the play is over. Excellent addition to the rule a couple years ago. Take a look at number 58, pulling the player off, which leads to more scuffling. Obviously, even in the championship games, emotions run pretty high. Take a look after the play. You'll see number 48 take a swipe at his opponent, number 84, and makes contact with the opponent's helmet. This is right on the edge, but not really a punch or a fight, in my opinion. UNS is the proper call, but certainly this is a player to continue to watch. Another area we have done a great job in officiating has to do with cleaning up the sidelines during live balls. See the action at the top of the screen here. There are at least 4 or 5 coaches in the white area, which is really the officials area, during the play. In this case, this was a warning, but obviously if it continues, it would be 2 successive 5-yard penalties and eventually a third to a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Had some contact been involved in this type of play, certainly we could have started without the warning and thrown the flag for 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct. for interfering with the official's ability to cover the play on the sideline. Our next play involves a hideout play, and we don't see it too often, but certainly this is one that we need to be aware of. It's Rule 9, Section 2, Article 2, Unfair Tactics. No simulated replacements or substitutions may be used to confuse opponents. No tactic associated with substitutes or the substitution process may be used to confuse the opponents. In this case, we have 2 substitutes coming in and then 3 leaving the field, but the third one, as he leaves, stops at the sideline. This is a typical classic hideout play. And you can see by the replay here, the players leaving the field and one stopping at the sideline. Nice job by the head linesman here in this case. Recognizes the substitute process, recognizes that this player stops right at the sideline there, properly brought back for an unsportsmanlike hideout play. Our next play involves coach's conduct. We all have them, but this is a good example of a coach complaining about a routine call, in this case a DOF, which leads to a UNS foul for throwing his play sheets all over the field. I thought the back judge does a nice job, not involved in this call, surveying the entire field, and he's the one that picks up the coach coming on the field and challenging the call by throwing his play sheets onto the field. So in this one, talk mechanics on your crew, as someone needs to be watching both sidelines for the coaches after the referee's announcement. This is what ignites the coach to get upset, to come on the field and throw his play sheets onto the field. Our next play involves a coach on the field again, and this has to go back a couple years as he tries to draw the fans into the game and tries to get the officials' attention. I thought years ago we talked about our officials trying to walk the coaches back to the sideline, but now with the new rule, this is immediately a foul for coming on the field, challenging the call. Referee does a nice job keeping his cool here, and certainly this would be an automatic foul starting last year, coming out on the field to challenge a call. Always have a second official there, but certainly if they're on the field, we know this is a foul immediately. Next example, coach's conduct once again is properly flagged. And no matter what the situation is, with the new rule this year, on the field, challenging the call, will draw a flag. And I think we've done a good job. I think we've gotten the coaches' attention. We have to look long and hard to find plays where coaches are getting their first counter. But certainly, to my knowledge, I don't think we've had a coach get 2 flags since last year with regard to UNS fouls. But that's certainly a good sign that this new rule is working. In this case, I think the coach knew he deserved a flag, but he was trying to make his point out in the field. This goes back a couple years, but a good example, if he takes one step out on the field and challenges the call, it's an automatic flag. I thought the crew on the sideline here did a nice job staying under control, explaining to the coach exactly what he's doing wrong, and flagging him accordingly. Here's another example of a coach's conduct on the field, challenging the call, whether it's to the officials, whether it's to his assistant coaches. He's lost a little bit of control in this situation. We do a nice job flagging this coach for grabbing the official, for coming on the field and challenging the call. And our last couple plays for today's training tape has to do with some major mechanics changes. Rule 923 gives the referee much latitude in handling obviously unfair acts during a game. This would include situations that arise when a team commits a blatant and obvious intentional foul, or fouls to gain a clock advantage late in the game. As you can see after this play, players empty the benches. We try to get the perpetrators the right numbers, throwing punches, etc. But if you can't do that and it gets out of control, certainly the new rules give you the opportunity to put an unsportsmanlike conduct foul on all players on both teams. And if that's the case, we'll start with that and then go from there. So the next time we have an unsportsmanlike conduct foul by any player, he'll be disqualified for his second unsportsmanlike foul. So this is a good rule if we lose control with the benches emptying and we can't get the perpetrators. In this case, the crew does a nice job a couple years ago identifying the players, hitting each individual player with a UNS foul. But if you can't do that and everyone's coming off the bench and you don't know if there's substitutes and too many people are involved, certainly to get control, a counter on every single player is now available per the rules. Our last play involved a live ball foul, but even if a situation arises prior to the game, before the coin toss, and teams start to scuffle, certainly the new rule this year to put a counter on everybody applies here. As you can see, right before the coin toss, a scuffle takes place on the sideline and both benches empty. And this would be a good situation if you can't get it under control and flag the individuals. A flag should be thrown and all players on the field would receive an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. In this case, it really gets out of hand. The coaches are helping, but we don't know who's doing what. Everyone has earned themselves a UNS foul. And our last play has to do with the new mechanic for intentional fouls. As a new interpretation, we should penalize each of these intentional fouls as unsportsmanlike conduct fouls and subsequently reset the game clock in these types of situations back to the time at the snap on the play in question. In this case, you'll see intentional fouls. And every team has these plays, whether you're a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator. At the end of a game, if they want to consume time, they're going to intentionally foul to take time off the clock. In this case, we do a nice job making the calls on the field for defensive holding, but this year now, the new rule says we'll make these fouls unsportsmanlike conduct fouls, enforce that penalty, reset the clock, and actually have a do-over. The entire play goes over. It's pretty obvious that number 24 and his teammates are not playing defense. They're tackling players out here. This is just to consume some time on the clock. You see the players going down. If this happens and it's obvious that it's more than one intentional foul, this is the type of play that we will put UNS fouls on each of these players, counter number 1, and reset the clock and start over. Well, that concludes our training tape for unsportsmanlike conduct fouls. As you can see, we had some recent rule changes that clearly improve the conduct of both players and coaches. We had to go back to the archives to find good examples of certain rule violations, and that's a good thing. Efforts by the Rules Committee, the Competition Committee, and of course by you as the officials who are responsible for consistent enforcement of these rules have clearly made our game better. Your continued efforts in this area is appreciated by all the coordinators, but we should never rest on our success. Good luck this season, and let's continue to be vigilant and consistent when it comes to player and coaches' conduct.